the Hellenistic period. Okay?
This was after Alex the Great death.
Right.
Okay.
This is what they call
When
the
you say
Hellenistic
they, are
period.
you meaning Western civilization?
History.
Oh, history.
That's why I put it on this side. History versus mystery.
And that's 14 or 146?
146 BC. So they say the Hellenistic period goes from there. We say the Hellenistic period goes from 323 to 415 AD. Okay, I'm sorry, that's AD. 323
Oh, eight.
to 146 AD. We say it goes from 323 to 415 AD with the death of, I don't know, Hypatia. I don't know if I said that right. Did I? Hypatia? Is that right? Close enough, right? They do it to our names. She was a great mathematician.
Wow.
Okay, of their era.
No,
Yes,
it's at 323 BC.
yes. 323 BC to 415 AD.
Yeah, I was just
BC, sorry.
yeah, because
323
on the
BC.
history side, it's like the second number is lower than the first.
BC. 323 BC to 146 AD.
Is that 4?
Huh?
15 over there?
415 AD. Now, the difference here was by 146, the Romans came in. Okay? Now, again, we're talking about his story versus mystery, or my story, or our story. Okay? 146, the Romans came in. To us, that was no difference. It's the same foreign people from over there. You know, so it didn't change anything for us. To them, it was the end of the Hellenistic period. To us, it remained the same, all the way up to the death of Hypatia. And her deal was, she was a real good mathematician. They didn't have a whole lot of them. So when she died, their influence faded. You know, there's nobody to claim our intellectual property. What we had given them for so many years before, as we just discussed. We had given them in the mystery schools for so many years, it spawned that growth of intellect during that time. But giving all the credit to people like, Hypatia is a problem, because once she's gone, the people don't know where to look anymore. So this is what took place. So 415 AD to about the 14th century. Remember, Honorable Ms. Beatrice Lincoln said 1,000 years between the end of the Hellenistic period, which was 415 AD, to the European Renaissance, which took place in the 14th century. We call this period the Muslim hegemony. Did I say that right, Brother Shabaka?
Homogeny.
Hegemony. I think I had to look that up.
Hegemony.
Hegemony?
Hegemon?
Hegemon. The Muslim hegemon. Okay? And basically what that means is they rule. They have political control over everything. Okay? That's what mystery calls it. You know what they call it? And it's gonna trip you out. Now, remember, okay, we have been teaching them for so long. Alexander comes in, he does all this conquering, all this violence. Remember, they burned the libraries, okay, 3rd century. They burned the libraries right around the time when he left out. And then they had another 100 years or so with limited amount of resources, and then they grew, okay? But it didn't last until their scholars died. Now another big thing is taking place within the next 200 years from the death of Hypatia. It was the advent of Muhammad ibn Abdullah. And what happened is Africans, Arabs, Asians, people not from the West got this heavy Islamic influence. So trading, minor trinkets and indulging in the promiscuous lifestyle of the Greeks and Romans was not something that indigenous people wanted to do. With the advent of Islam, they became really religious people. So we don't need to mess with y'all unbelievers. Y'all over there having all this premarital sex and fornicating, bestiality. They're having sex with animals and everything. You know, nobody wants anything from Greece or Rome. So with this new influx of a religion, of Islam, Muslims began to get control over a lot of stuff. And then this is what they call this period. From 415 AD to the 14th century, when the Muslims, when Africans writing in the Arabic language were given all of this to mathematics. This is where algebra was coming from. This is how far back they'll go. They'll go to the Muslim hegemony, to when the Muslims were ruling this period. And they'll give them algebra. They'll still call it algebra. You know, again, the bias. But they call this period the Dark Ages. Look it up. They call that period the Dark Ages. We left them in the dark. It wasn't no Dark Ages for us. Or, I should say, for indigenous people. They left them in the dark.
So that's the era when, you know, castles and stuff like those. Because every time I think of Dark Ages, I think of like that type of time.
When you think of the Dark Ages, you think of castles. Those are European castles. The reason why you think of them European castles, because that's the only place it was dark during this 1,000-year period.
Was in the castles?
In Europe. That's the only place it was dark. Nobody had a need for their loose, you know, deceptive lifestyle. So the indigenous people did not include them in society pretty much anymore. So they were left in the dark until they were humble. And then finally in the 14th century, they started coming into what they now call Arabia, in that area, and learning. Say, okay, we get it. We don't know nothing. Y'all got all of the stuff over there. Okay, we're going to come back and learn from y'all. So the 14th century began the European Renaissance. Okay, the European Renaissance.
This is after the Dark Ages?
Right. Again, for us, it was an incline. Islam was coming in. We were tired of being controlled and dealing with them. So for us, we spent 1,000 years writing stuff down. For them, they were in the dark while we were preparing again for them. So then they come back in the 14th century, and now you got the European Renaissance, which is taking place. And then finally, these, you know, the foreign people from the West are finally humbled enough to learn from us. And they got algebra and the order of operations during that period. And the basics of what they have now, geometry, calculus, and some of the basic maths. They got after the 14th century, which is called the European Renaissance.
Oh, so that's like the period Michelangelo?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Michelangelo, Picasso's, and all that. Okay. So, I want to pose questions on the quiz, for the quiz, regarding this last section. Who was the master of masters, the supreme genius,
Imhotep.
Yeah. I was going to
in 2580 BC? Absolutely, Imhotep. And what was his name later on in the first century?
Yeah.
Hermes.
What's the rest of it? Hermes what?
His books, I'm going to just give this to y'all.
Trismegistus.
Trismegistus, or Trismegistus.
Is that where they
Thrice
get
great.
the, is that where they get the word magistrate from?
Nah. Trice is 3, mega.
No,
Right.
I'm just saying
What was the name
magistus.
later when?
In the first century, from the 3rd to 1st century AD, he was called Hermes Trismegistus, or
Oh, Megastus, because he pronounced it different.
3 times great. Because I say mega when I say big or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why I said mega. But I'm not please, I don't know nothing. So Hermes, or Thoth, Thoth, was another name that they attributed to him. His books are called the Hermetica. Okay, that was a question that I had on the quiz. I didn't get to that. But his books are called the Hermetica. So if you want to look it up, the Hermetica is his books. And the 17 that we mentioned